Good day everyone. For this module 2, we will discuss about the curriculum development in the Philippines. So, makikita natin dito kung paano ba nag-develop no from the start yung curriculum ng Philippines up to the point na we have now our present curriculum setup. Now, the most um, huge change in terms of the curriculum development in the country really started no after the time that we have our independence, kasi our educational system is really patterned sa American educational type no ng learning. So but although we based our system from the Americans, meron ding marami pang mga differences in terms of the emphasis doon sa subjects na tinuturo, at the same time pati sa number of years that was implemented no as compared yung dito sa Pilipinas at doon sa Amerika. Now, nag-start lahat of course in terms sa history. Nagsimula ang development ng curriculum natin during sa pinakauna pa talaga yung tinatawag na pre-colonial period. So, when we talk about pre-colonial period, ito yung panahon na hindi pa nasakop na ng ibang mga lahi yung Pilipinas. And the system of education before is primarily anchored doon sa tinatawag na vocational training. Vocational siya, hindi yung kagaya nung sa TESDA na alam natin ngayon, but more or less, it's a community type of education wherein the training of the children or the learners come from the members or the elderly members of the community. So, practically, this kind of educational system is communal at saka naka-base doon sa tradition at saka sa culture no ng isang lugar or community. Now, halimbawa, the kind of education na practical, like for instance, kung paano yung pagsasayaw, medical practices like this medical spiritual practices performed by the babaylan. At the same time, yung survival skills like pangangaso, pangingisda, and also pagsasaka. And the prominent noon na ginagamit no sa panahon na yon, doon yung way of system and writing nila is actually done by carving no sa mga balat ng kahoy, sa minsan inuukit sa bato, and most likely minsan yung ibang ginagamit din is yung sa clay or mga luwad. Yun ang system of writing nila using the alibata and the baybayin. So pero iba-iba itong klase ng mga system of writing ito. Depende din sa lugar sa Pilipinas. Like sa northern, iba naman dito sa southern, at saka yung sa nasa middle part no ng Pilipinas. Kasi magpi-play out din yung factor doon, yung religious orientation nila. Like for instance, before the colonization, most or majority of the Filipinos are considered to be as Muslims and atheists. So sila yung mga believers na hindi pa naniniwala before sa Christianity. Now after that, nung dumating na yung mga Espanyol, it's called the colonial period or the Spanish period. So for more than 300 years they were here, and considering na ganun sila katagal, there are also a lot of influences na nadala nila dito sa Philippines, especially doon sa educational system din natin. Kasi the Spaniards are known also for their value in terms of education, especially the friars. Now, the formal education, nag-start yung formal education natin wherein meron ng classroom, may teacher sa loob ng classroom, and then of course there are setups kung paano na mag-aaral. Also, the subjects were arranged na in a ladderized manner from the lower or the basic level hanggang sa higher level of learning. That's the reason why sa time ng mga Espanyol, they were able to set up mga old universities, no, sa Philippines, like the University of Santo Tomas, the Ateneo. These are kinds of mga educational institutions na na-set up during the time of the Spaniards. And the friars are actually considered also as mga educational advocates, no, sa panahon na yon. Like here, kung titingnan natin yung writing system at saka languages na develop yan, pero naka-anchor din naman doon sa religion. They were able to teach us the languages of Spanish at saka at the same time yung Latin. And most likely, they were also having this emphasis doon sa academic discipline, like yung rote memorization, yun yung emphasis talaga nila. At the same time, yung discipline at saka yung values orientation in relation doon sa religion ng Christianity. So sa panahon na ito, there is what we call as homogeneity pagdating sa classification ng learners, kasi hati pa kung saan mag-aaral yung lalaki at saka sa yung babae. So may mga schools for boys, there are also schools for girls. So bawal pang maghalo, no, yung babae at saka lalaki. And the women sa panahon na ito, they were given the chance to study, pero yung level nila hanggang actually nasa sa atin ngayon, nasa high school lang, no, yung pinaka peak level na pag-aaral ng mga babae, unlike sa mga lalaki, wherein the boys are really given the chance to pursue higher education as compared to girls na it's either they go to secular schools like yung pagluluto, pananahi, no, housekeeping, and others would go to yung second type ng school, yung beaterio or training for nunnery or yung pagmamadre. So yan lang yung limitations, no, ng mga babae sa panahon na yon in terms of the educational opportunities. Then sa panahon na to, sa Spanish period, the printing press were introduced, no, kasi at this point in time, publication was already known na for in other parts of the world, especially in Europe, no. So the Spaniards are known to be good writers and chroniclers. So that's why dinala nila yan dito sa Philippines. And the first book na limbag sa Pilipinas is the Doctrina Christiana, which is a religious book, or actually it's a booklet, no, kasi maliit lang siya na libro. Okay? So yun lang tandaan natin pagdating sa mga Espanyol. Primarily their education is founded at saka naka-base doon sa religion. They have other secular educational content like medicine, law, no, and letters, engineering. Well-rounded na, no, yung kasi isipin natin, no, they were able to establish nga universities during this time, no. So 1600s ang University of Santo Tomas andyan na. So napakataas na ng level, no, ng kaalaman ng mga Espanyol pagdating sa pag-aaral. And that also paved the way for the Filipino Ilustrados to be enlightened and educated. Yun nga lang, at the same time, it also became a tool for the Spaniards na somehow influence, no, ma-influence yung culture at saka yung mindset natin, kasi nga they actually use religion in order to have control over our mindsets, no. Kay syempre tinatakot man yung mga Pilipino using the word or the name of God. Now, of course, after that we have the first republic. During this time, pumasok na, no, yung mga Amerikano, no, sa Philippines. So at the exit of the Spaniards, sumasok yung mga Pilipino, yung mga Amerikano. And during this time, this educational system was actually established, no, by the revolutionary government of the Philippines. Um, ito yung situation, class, na the educational system is actually founded doon or nakabase doon sa military training. So, kasi nga revolutionary government, and most likely yung mga trainings nito is naka-base doon sa art of war, kasi during that time the Philippines is still under this struggle for freedom, no, against sa pagpasok, no, ng mga Americans dito sa bansa. And then during the American period, ito na, no, medyo na tawag nito, nasupil na ng mga Amerikano yung mga pag-aalsa ng mga Pilipino, and they were able to establish this somehow stable kind of educational system sa Philippines. So at this point in time, they have selected, no, medyo hands-on sila dito sa sa pagtuturo, because for them it's one way to brainwash and reorient the mindset of the Filipinos regarding the purpose of them coming in the country. So tinuro na sa mga, in order to bridge the gap between the Americans and the Filipinos, tinuro ngayon itong English or English language sa mga Pinoy, no? Yung medium of communication. That's the reason why sa panahon noon, if you're going to listen, no, sa mga elderly natin na talagang product ng American school, napakagaling, no, mag-English, because their teachers are actually Americans, no, during that time. So these Americans are known to be as Thomasites. Tinawag sila na Thomasites kasi when they came to the country, they are on board the warship known as USS Thomas. These are mga professional teachers talaga coming from America and brought in the country to educate the Filipinos. But before them coming, yung pinakaunang mga teachers dito sa Pilipinas ay mga American soldiers, o yung mga sundalong Amerikano. So, ang ginawa nila is they have experimented yung public school system wherein it has been opened, no, widely in the different areas in the country in order to educate the Filipino people. So the purpose of this nga, it's easier for them to somehow create understanding among them, knowing na itong mga Filipinos are already capable of speaking their language. So sa time na ito, yung pinakauna na educational institution for aspiring Filipino teachers, kasi na set up na yung educational system ng bansa through the public school institutions. Tinayo ngayon itong Philippine Normal University, which ang aim is to train, no, mga Filipino teachers to take the place also of the American Thomasites. Okay, so the high school system, elementary school system, yung kanyang content is yung special education, School of Arts and Trades, agriculture, commerce, marine. So ito yung mga primary subject matter or content doon sa curriculum na itinayo ng mga Amerikano sa bansa. So the high school educational system, somehow it became very significant, no, and instrumental sa progress ng Philippine economy. Mainly because, of course, aside from learning the English language, there are also other skills na tinuro sa mga Filipino students. Okay? So that's primarily the entirety of the American period. So the setting up of public schools, sa time nila yan. First teachers, sa Amerikano yan. And yung formal education ng mga Americans, it's centered talaga on American patronage, no? Brainwashing the Filipinos to like the Americans. And one thing nga dito is sa panahon na ito, they were actually the ones who selected Jose Rizal to become the national hero of the Philippines. Kasi nga, considering that Rizal is an educated person, he really somehow fits doon sa advocacy at saka sa strategy no ng mga Amerikano na i-educate ang mga Pilipino. So, to the point na yung tinuturo lang sa mga Pinoy is something that is directed also by the Americans. So, that's the very important element that we should learn about education. An education can become a tool. No? It's either to brainwash or to raise awareness among the learners. So, napaka-importante kung ano yung klaseng information na tinuturo natin because even education has been used as a tool or an instrument for war and political interest. Now, after the Americans, of course, here comes the dark age of the Philippines with the entry of the Japanese regime. No? Although short lang yung span ng occupation ng mga Japanese dito sa Philippines, but somehow there are so many things din no, na kanilang na-introduce. But nonetheless, kasi nga merong misunderstanding doon sa interest o conflict of interest between the Americans and the Japanese in terms of occupying the Philippines. So medyo sa time na yon sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, the alliance and sympathy of the Filipino people is actually with the Americans and not with the Japanese. But some books in history states that the reason why the Japanese came in the country is actually for their main purpose of this what we call the program Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, wherein with it runs or it lives by the motto na sinasabi nila na Asia is for Asians. So, Americans should not be intervening with the business of the Asian people. Pero kung titignan naman natin, yung manner din naman ng kanilang pag-promote nun is through war. No? So, parang gusto lang i-unify yung Asia by means of war. Siyempre, kaya may resistance din pagdating sa panahon na yan. It also becomes inconsistent, mainly because way before na dumating sila sa Pilipinas, they also invaded na parts of China, which ignited the Sino-Japanese War. During that time nga, no, very famous yung event in Nanjing, China, the rape of Nanjing, wherein millions, hundreds of thousands of Chinese residents of Nanjing were actually killed and raped by Japanese soldiers. No, they were brutally killed. That's the reason why it becomes unbelievable for the rest of the Asian people. Their purpose really is for prosperity of Asia and not for self-interest. Now, sa Japanese regime, ang basic principle ng kanilang education na inintroduce sa bansa natin is realization of new order. Like, Asia is for Asians, Philippines is for Filipinos. Yun. Number 2 is promote a new Filipino culture-based education. It's about loving your own culture and not embracing Western culture's brainwashing through education. Kaya nga, ang mga Filipinos, di ba, we are considered as the little brown Americans. Somehow, it violates the main purpose no, of loving your own culture to the point na you are no longer acquainted with your own identity. Kasi nga, napalitan na ng bago or ng iba. Number 3, elevation of morals of people, give up on materialism. The educational system of the Japanese is known actually for character build-up at saka discipline. That's the reason why sa curriculum nila at in the present time, kilala yan sila na sa elementary, yung mga bata is grades 1 to 3, they do not teach subjects yet doon sa curriculum sa level na yan, but they instill character development at saka value integration. Turuan nila paano maglinis, paano magmano, no, yung mga kagandahang asal, yun muna tinuturo sa mga bata. Then pagdating na ng higher level, practical practical na application, not morely doon sa memorization and other uh, knowledge based no na klase ng learning. So that's why dito sa kanila number 3, it's giving up of materialism and other things which is lower than character development. So yan ang kanilang emphasis. Number 4, pagturo ng Japanese language. So they also introduce to us yung pagsasalita ng Nippongo or Nihongo. Number 5, promotion of vocational courses. So the love for labor, actually that's 5 and 6 there, it's interrelated. Vocational courses, yung pag-aalaga ng bibe or domestication of animals, that's actually taught by the Japanese during that time. And if you're doing this, also yung emphasis nila is you love your work. That's why Japanese people are known to be as hardworking people. Considering na the resources or natural resources is meager and limited sa Japan, but their country is one of the first world countries because of their attitude, yun nga, sa moral development at sa character development. Their attitude towards work, love for labor, is very high. So, maliban doon sa if you're going to read histories about Japanese attacks, pag naubusan niya, naubusan yung gasolina yung mga airplanes nila, talagang instead of going home, they will really die for their country. So, tawag doon, mga talaga yan sila, nationalist, and national fanaticism. They are willing to die for their countries, or for their country, I mean. So, yun ang kakaiba yung kanilang patriotism. Kung sasabihin na they love their country, they are really willing to die for that love of their country. Unlike sa Filipinos, medyo hindi pa na-instill yung ganyang klaseng discipline ng pagmamahal sa bansa, because even sa singing of Philippine National Anthem, we are somehow not really giving importance to that and respect. Then the Third Republic, this is during the time na si Manuel Rojas na. Ito yung time na papasok na yung mga changes sa kasi wala namang occupation. So the public and private schools were supplemented at saka ibinalik sa dati. Kasi of course exit naman yung mga Japanese. Then Fourth Republic, ito na yung sa establishment ng Department of Education, which is before, that's DEX, sa time ni President Ferdinand Marcos. Okay, the Department of Education somehow created mga regional offices, division offices para mas mapadali yung pagmamanage ng mga public school. And also, under the DEX is yung supervision ng private school. So actually, almost similar na ito siya sa present. Pero, what we have before is the basic education curriculum na, of course, we have 6 years elementary, 4 years high school, and that's it. Then proceed na ng kolehiyo. And sa Fifth Republic naman, this is yung yung pag-implement ng EFA or Education for All, wherein the basic education became compulsory for all children. But to the point na walang babayaran. So, this is under yung sa tinatawag natin na Free Public Secondary Education Act of 1988. Both elementary and secondary under the program of EFA or Education for All. So, that's why public schools, wala kang fee na babayaran. Yung mga ginabayaran sa PTA, hindi yan siya part dun sa tuition. When we talk about free education, it refers to the tuition at saka sa mga books na babayaran. Siyempre, uniform, na yan, sa parents na yan siya. Then, of course, in the 2000, in 2006, the Education for All, part pa rin siya din doon sa, dito sa, yung sinasabi ko kanina na sa Fifth Republic. So, sa 2006 na implement, kasi it's gearing towards yung implementation ng free secondary education, compulsory ng elementary, then sa Education for All, na-provide na ng mga channel for alternative learnings, wherein kahit yung mga nasa edad na lagpas na sana sa basic education is talagang they're given alternatives like the ALS, no? Modalities para at least makatapos sila ng pag-aaral. Nandiyan na din yun before yung bridging and then modular, no, nag-start na din doon. Din sa recent years, 2010 onwards, it's the dawn, no, of the new curriculum in the country implementing K-12. So we have the kindergarten at K. So we have K1, K2, then grade 6 hanggang grade 6, grade 1 to grade 6 for elementary, added by 4 years in junior high school, and then lumabas na nga nito yung senior high school, which has been long implemented na in other countries. Tayo na lang yung naiiwanan during that time. So this was under, no, sa time ni Benigno Aquino III for that particular time. So they formally adopted that when President Aquino, former senator, was already the president at that time. So it was put into law. It's known as the Enhanced Basic Education, which dati kasi is BEC lang yan. Ngayon, naging e-BEC, Enhanced Basic Education, through the implementation of K-12. So it allows the graduates of the educational system of the country na mas maging competitive globally. So ngayon, nalagdagan yung number of years to ensure that kahit na hanggang lang, matapos lang sa high school, is equipped na yung mga graduate ng senior high school to look for employment kung ayaw nila mag-proceed ng kolehiyo. At the same time, their age is already fit doon kasi 16 man usually magtapos or gagraduate ng junior high school. Pagtapos ng senior high school, nasa 18 na yan, no? So, pwede na mag-aral. Pwede nang, maghanap ng trabaho yung mga ayaw mag-aral sa kolehiyo. So, these are the developments, no, of our educational system starting from the very beginning hanggang sa present. So, madami siyang pinagdaanan, changes, and kung mapapansin natin, contributory masyado yung system of education introduced by other countries in a way of colonization and conquest. So, nung sinakop tayo, it's a good thing that they were able to introduce to us yung mga ganong klaseng changes sa society. Kasi before sila dumating, very basic man yung system of education. So, siguro, mas naging matagal pa yung development ng country had it not, no, for the coming of these colonizers during that time. Of course, there are drawbacks. Siyempre, kasi sinakop naman, it's not a good thing. But of course, looking at both sides, there is always yung tinatawag natin na good at saka bad side doon. Okay, so that's all for now, and I'll see you on my next discussion for the third or module 3 for curriculum development. Okay, thank you.